There is a famous episode related by the great Chassid Mendel Futterfass of his sojourn in a Russian gulag. During his time in Siberia, he met an individual who had previously been a tightrope walker before he was sent to Siberia for some crime. Ever the Chassid, Reb Mendel sought to learn a lesson from each and every episode and occurrence that he encountered in his life. Once, on a May Day following Stalin's passing, the guards relaxed the strict rules of the camp and allowed for there to be an impromptu circus that should take place. They invited this tightrope walker to perform his stunt. The tightrope walker, he tied his ropes between two poles and began his feat. Now, the way Reb Mendel says the story, as I heard it, Reb Mendel says that in his first attempt, this tightrope walker fell. But Reb Mendel says that gefallen wie a Katz. He fell like a cat. He fell like a professional on all fours. That though he fell, he got back up and he continued his walk across the tightrope. After he had finished performing his fabulous stunt, this tightrope walker came to Reb Mendel and asked him if perhaps he understood and was able to figure out how he had done his feat. Reb Mendel thought for a few minutes, contemplating, envisioning in his mind what he had seen, and said, yes, the way that you performed your stunt was that you constantly were riveted on the other side, on the pole, on the other side of the tightrope. Indeed, the man was surprised that Reb Mendel was able to figure it out, and he asked him, okay, do you perhaps know what the hardest part of the stunt is? Again, Reb Mendel thought for a few minutes and finally said, yes. When you turned around and weren't able to keep your mind on the point, that's when at that moment was the most difficult part of the feat. Now, the lesson that's usually brought out from the story is that we need to constantly keep our minds on the go. Constantly keep our minds on the point, and if we do so, we won't falter. We won't fall. However, in truth, I think there are other lessons as well. The pasuk says in Mishlei that Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'kam, that a tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up. However, a rasha falls and doesn't get up. Now, the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha is not that the tzaddik doesn't fall and the rasha does fall. But the tzaddik knows how to get back up. The tzaddik, even when he falls, he's able to get back up, he's able to fall like a professional. In Tanya, it's explained that each person, every tzaddik, falls. It's not merely that the tzaddik may fall, but falling is a necessity of growth. When a person is mahalach, when a person jumps, there's a moment that he's between levels. He's not on the place where he was, and he's not on the new level that he is aspiring to reach. So he's nowhere. And at that moment, he's at a complete loss of where he is, and he's fallen conceptually. Perhaps this is the falling that is expressed in the tightrope walker's turning around. Although he doesn't actually fall, conceptually he does fall. Conceptually, he's unaware of where he is, and therefore he's fallen. Therefore he fell. However, what the tzaddik needs to do, what the tightrope walker needs to do, is to envision in his mind, conceptually, the point. Although he doesn't see the point, he needs to, in his mind, envision the point, and realize that although he doesn't see the point, doesn't see the other side, the other pole at the other end of the spectrum, he needs to envision it in a conceptual manner. Now, in Kabbalistic terms, what this means is that there is only one point. And the point that all that is Atmos. God himself, the essence of Hashem himself. All that is a manifestation of that point. For there is nothing else. If everything else comes from God, then all that is that point. Meaning to say that we're all the circle that extends from the point of Atmos, but the point of Atmos is expressive in us, in all that is. We're all the decimal points of the one, but all there is the one, for there can't be anything besides the one. Therefore, because there is nothing else besides the one, and a person is riveted at this axiomatic point that ein oid milvad, there's nothing else besides him, and what we mean by him is Atmos. Therefore, man constantly seeks to see the manifestation of this point in all his actions. Therefore, he studies Torah, he does mitzvahs, and he seeks to bring the aura of Atmos, the revelation and the manifestation of this point in all his actions and all that he does. However, we don't always have this point. There are moments that we conceptually fall or we actually fall. Either we conceptually fall that we see tzimtzum, we see the darkness, and don't see the or, we don't see God, we don't see the point of Atmos, or we actually fall. We sin, and we have folly. Now, the way that we are to fall in dignity, to fall like a professional, to fall with class like a cat, is that even in moments of folly, even in moments where we see darkness, to realize that that too is the point. That too is Atmos. That too is the manifestation of God. For there is nothing else besides him. And if there's nothing else besides him, then that too must be God. In Kabbalistic terms, it's what's expressed by Rabbi Yisrael Saruk, that just as or the light of God, the limitless manifestation and expression of God, is expressive of Atmos, so too the tzimtzum and contraction of the or and the contraction of God, what we perceive to be a contraction at least, that too is really an expression of God. Which means where we don't see God, that's also God. For there is nothing else besides God. In Chassidus explained that not only is tzimtzum a manifestation of Atmos, but it's truly deeper. For the expression of tzimtzum comes from, so to speak, a deeper level of Atmos, a deeper level of the point than the or itself. That being the case, in moments of darkness, when we realize that all there is truly God, and in moments of sin, when we realize that there too is Atmos, that all that happens is a bahashgacha pratis, and is divinely orchestrated, when we focus on this point, we'll be able to get ourselves back up and refocus on revealing the manifestation of Or. For although the tzimtzum is as well God, that's not a part of God that man can experience. We must focus on the experiential aspect of God, of bringing the Or and Torah mitzvahs into the world. However, the knowledge that there is nothing else besides God, helps us to realize that even when we don't see the point is there. And it helps us to refocus on the point. Now, this is essentially what's expressed in the statement of Yirmiyahu, Kifanu alei oiref olefan. They turned to me with their nape, with their back of their neck, and not with their face. We're always in the presence of God. We're always in the presence of Atmos. Where all there is Atmos. The question is it panim? Do we see it? Do we experience it? Or do we turn to him with our nape? Meaning to say that the only place where Atmos isn't, or we don't experience God, is in our own bechira chafshus, in our own free will, in our own ego, in our own consciousness. However, when we realize that that ego itself and that bechira itself is also a creation of God, and perhaps the greatest creation of God, then even in the moments of darkness, we'll be able to transform the darkness into light and again refocus and bring Torah and mitzvos into practical revelation and manifestation in our lives.